Passcode were just on the first take. Now, this happened about an hour ago, and I didn't know anything about this. I'm going to give it a like in advance. But yeah, I'm excited to check this out. They're performing Ray, which is a song from very much earlier back in their career. And so much earlier back in their career that, to be honest, we're not just going to check out the first take version. I'm going to go back and listen to the original again to get myself a little bit of balance. Because I'm going to be honest, for me, Passcode is a group who I enjoyed them in concept a lot earlier in their career. But I can't deny, for me, they really took off with their reinvention and the addition of Emily into the lineup. And, you know, I know some like longtime fans and purists might be a little bit upset about that, but it's just, I gotta be honest, I really liked Emily. I was following her back when she was in Lady Baby. She was part of my favourite incarnation of Lady Baby. Again, another unpopular opinion, but I loved that 4-piece lineup version. So, you know, I've got to be honest, I'm both interested to hear them on the first take, partly because this is a group who uses a lot of vocal effects. That's an intrinsic part of their sound. So I'm wondering, is that the way they're going to do it here? Partly because of the fact that obviously despite that, they are very well known to perform with live musicians. And so, yeah, they do have a very raw sound that I'm sure will translate so well to the sort of first take arena, but also partly because of the fact that, as I mentioned, this is a reincarnation of an extremely popular song from early in their career. As mentioned, I have not heard the first take video that we're about to watch that came out an hour ago. I have watched the original before, but quite a while ago. It's been a few years since I've gone back and listened to this. So anyway, if you just want to see my reaction to the first take one, just use the scan bar, scan ahead, you'll see me reacting to it. But if you're interested, I'm going to check out the original version of Ray first. We're going to listen to that. Then we're going to listen to the first take version. Okay? Everyone on board? Right, so let's go back, listen to the original version of Ray, which we've all heard before, but I haven't heard for a while. Then we'll do a reaction to that first take recording that just came out featuring Emily. Let's go. As said, I know this is kind of like... This is one of their most popular songs, and this is one of the... I remember enjoying this one a lot myself when it first came out. Let's turn the volume up. We need more volume. Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah. Oh, it's coming back now, yeah. Why don't I not listen to this more often? That is such a solid chorus. Yeah, do you know what I remember now when I did my initial reaction, but I think it's still on the channel. I remember being shocked by just how this song has got a much more traditional structure than a lot of the other songs. And that pre-chorus is killer. I love that little chord step there. I feel bad. I feel bad that I didn't listen to this song more. Oh, here we go. That addition of the strings is very Bish. Oh, the building chord pattern. bass line. You know, this is giving me a lot to think about before we go into this into the first take version. Alright, this gives me a lot to... Sorry about me adjusting the volumes as we're going here, but you know, this is giving me a lot to think about before we go into the first take version, and let me tell you for the reason why. I think when I first initially heard this song, I can't help but feel like the fact that this is such a traditionally structured song. I mean, it's still crazy, but you know, it's kind of got like the 4/4 beat, the 4/4 rhythm and everything, and you know, it's sort of verse, chorus, the bridge is this big build up. I mean, I said that the strings sound like they come from a Bish song, but the whole song has a slightly Bish-esque feel. I'm not saying it doesn't feel like a Passcode song entirely, but it feels like it's sort of on the edges of what the Passcode sound was at the time. The funny thing is, though, is listening to this now, this song, and I'd be really interested to know what other Passcode fans think, you know, sort of more dedicated Passcode fans think, but this song actually feels like it almost has more in common with a lot of their more recent songs that I do feel have been a bit more structurally... well, less structurally berserk of recent. I do feel like this song almost feels like it belongs with the sound that Passcode have been leaning a little bit more towards recently. You know, slightly more chorus heavy, slightly more catchy in a way. And again, I don't mean any of this as a detrimental or against the band, because I think that the one thing that is true is that Passcode have maintained a Passcode identity throughout, even with the member change. So for me, I definitely am interested to hear this now because, yeah, I think at the time, maybe this was one of those songs where if you'd asked me back when this came out and I did the reaction to it, whether when I reacted to it, I think it was already like a year or so old. But if you asked me at the time where I would have put this, I would have probably at the time said, oh, this sounds more like it belongs on a Bish playlist. Whereas now, having seen how the group's evolved, it's like the group's sound is kind of spread into all these places where I go, oh, actually, yeah, this fits into the more recent umbrella of sounds that that Passcode have gone for. So I am really interested to see how the new lineup does actually handle this. Now, one of the things that is very interesting as well is obviously First Take is very much about, you know, I know the arguments behind this, so I'm not going to get into any of the controversy, although I don't really think it's that, but the idea right down to the name is that the First Take is somewhat about performance purity, so you wouldn't expect like vocoder effects on their voices, but that's also quintessentially the Passcode sound. So I'm very intrigued about whether this is going to be performed with vocal effects or not. I can already see on their mic stands they have something coming out the back. I don't know whether that's just part of the mic setup or not. Maybe I should press play and we can find out. But anyway, I'm really excited to see what we get from this. I'm glad I went back and listened to the original first of all, because it's definitely it's given me a fresh way to think about this before we jump in. But oh, fingers crossed. I'm looking forward to this a lot. Let's see what we get. I mean, that song was so good that I just want to hear it twice anyway. All right, here we go.
この4分間に自分たちの生き様をファーストテイクに刻みつけに来ました。
Let's
パスコー
go.
ド始めます。
Yeah. Oh, I'm loving it. They got their full musical setup. They got their backing band there. Is that producer guy? Which one's producer guy? All right, let's go. Loving that raw sound.
作り合う心拍数は限界値超えてやつだらけ狂わせる雑音の中で僕の物語を続ける青で床を親しんだ矛盾取り出して泣け
Okay, there's a bit of effect on there, but it's definitely tuned down. Nice. The choral vocal effect has a little bit more idiosyncrasy in it. Makes it sound bigger. I'm just loving hearing it like this. Oh man, this is it's giving me. I'm wondering how this will sound to someone who's never heard of Passcode before. This melodic rock song with screams in the background. Oh, a little bit of tempo creep there. Don't recognise Emily when she's not shouting at me. They have got beautiful voices. It sounds so good. I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad you had fun, Passcode. That was an absolute freaking joy. Now, let me just explain a couple of the reasons why I think that was great. But also, there's a couple of things that I do want to pick up on this where I think maybe there's a couple of faults this has left me with where I'm kind of questioning a few things. But first of all, let's just talk about the positives, because overwhelmingly, this was so fun to hear. And I will definitely come back and listen to this version again, because by having a real lack of effects on their voices, again, when you do that, you get more the idiosyncrasies, the tiny little things that aren't so much imperfections, they're just kind of the natural variations in your voice. I mean, when you listen to a voice, when you see a voice on like an oscilloscope, it's not a perfect sine wave. It has the little human things that make it up. So hearing those idiosyncrasies play off against each other as they were singing in what was essentially perfect harmony was lovely. You got to hear more of a feeling of four people singing rather than just this voice being conjoined into a big affected mass is the quintessential thing of the Passcode sound. And I must say again, I am not saying this as someone who dislikes the Passcode sound. I like the Passcode sound. I don't even really have any desire for them to change it. It's just that, you know, it is worth pointing out that this does show a beautiful other side to the band's sound, to the group's sound. It highlights that thing. It reminds me of this is a bit of an obscure reference, but there was that freaking American rapper guy called T-Pain, and he was like one of the first people to use that really over the top auto tune thing that everyone hated. And then someone heard him sing without auto tune, and it became like a meme. Like it was an early meme in the internet years ago. It was like, oh my god, he can actually sing, and but that kind of got spread everywhere. And it's kind of dare I say, it's a similar thing here in that we know they can sing. But in a way, it's just kind of nice when you hear their voices like this, so low on effects, because you can just kind of enjoy a little bit of that aspect. Yes, do you know what's a good example? When you think about heavy metal band playing like with distorted guitars and stuff, you come to them for that sound. You want that sound. You want to hear their songs sounding heavy. If they suddenly released an acoustic album, you might be like, okay, a couple of acoustic songs is fine, but acoustic album's not really what I came to you for. However, if you heard them playing acoustic, you'd still enjoy it because you'd be like, yeah, you're a great guitarist. It's nice to hear you just in the sort of rawness of your sound every now and then, just to appreciate the talent that you do have underneath the effect that is your sound. And I think that's the way I would look at this. The curious thing is, so for me, as someone who likes this group and who I really should listen to them more often, but I do really enjoy their music and I cover them regularly. For me, this is a real pleasure to hear. I really enjoyed this. What it makes me think, though, is I wonder what this would sound like to someone who just watches the first take but doesn't actually know Passcode. Because the funny thing is, if you don't know Passcode, first of all, it's going to be really funny hearing this melodic rock song where there's just one member is screaming throughout. That would be a bit weird. Because, in a lot of other Passcode songs, it makes a lot of sense, the scream vocals, because it's kind of metal-oriented. This just feels like a melodic rock song, so it makes sense if you're already coming to it from a Passcode standpoint. But if you're not someone who knows Passcode and you're just thinking, oh, this is a cool rock song, and then the screams start, then that's going to be a bit strange. Although the scream is the very first bit of vocal, in all fairness, so that maybe explains it. But you might be confused by the end. The other thing as well is I have to be honest, because there is still a little bit of vocal effect in this that you can hear. I do wonder how that would again play for someone who doesn't know Passcode, because it feels perhaps a bit indecisive. Don't get me wrong. As someone who likes Passcode, I enjoy hearing them like this because it keeps a little bit of their quintessential sound, but also allows their voices a bit more room to breathe. However, to someone who doesn't know this, they might be like, oh, wait, they got a little bit of auto-tune on there. Wait, are they cheating on the first take? I can imagine someone who doesn't know the group maybe being, I wouldn't say put off, but maybe being a little bit confused. So I do wonder in a way whether maybe they should have done this version, because the effect is so low, but it is just about audible. I wonder if they would have been better off just taking the vocal effect off entirely for this, because they pretty much have reduced it to the point where it's only just a little bit anyway. That being said, though, I've got to be honest, I really enjoyed this. This was charming. I think it's a great addition to the original. The original, I apologise for not coming back to it more often because what a fantastic little song it actually is. Very catchy, very enjoyable, very fun. Yes, it is a little bit different for Passcode, at least at the time, but it is a fantastic addition to their catalogue. And the new version, well, I think it works great. Emily is a little bit different, but I think her voice works great with it. I think the charm is there. It was really lovely to hear all four members with the idiosyncrasies of their voices slightly more clearly displayed. And I thought this was a real pleasure. So anyway, as always, get in the comments. Tell me what you think. Let me know if you're a long-time Passcode fan or if you're new, because I'm interested to hear both perspectives. And until I hopefully see you very soon for the next one of these. Until then, for now, ciao, ciao.